Notts County Talk back with another Pavis Perspective episode. We're joined by Notts County Ladies manager Adam Dunleavy. Adam, thanks for joining us.
How you doing, guys? It's a pleasure. Good to see you
Thanks for coming
both.
on.
Yeah, you too. We're going to talk about obviously the ladies team, just the coronavirus in general, how it's affecting that, and also the men's team and sort of how we can see that panning out. So I'll hand over to Tom for the first question.
Yeah, Adam, as George just said, thanks for coming on. First thing I want to talk about, because there might be people that aren't too sure about it, how's it going with the women's team at the minute? So the start of the season.
Yeah, it's gone really, really well. Obviously, this year's brought its challenges with obviously the whole pandemic and a new way of working in many respects. But yeah, no, as far as the start's gone, it's been really, really positive. Results have been good, so yeah, we're happy so far, so good.
Yeah, I saw you played Derby the other week and got pegged back last minute, and I saw there's a lot of frustration with that one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it was really frustrating. I think with that game, it's just one of those things. I think from a sort of neutral perspective, it was a decent performance and it was a good game. It was end to end. Derby were really competitive and it was sort of 100 miles an hour for the full 90 minutes. But yeah, I think just the standards we set ourselves as a staff and players, we're just always disappointed if we don't get the 3 points. So yeah, to concede within the last sort of couple of minutes was quite frustrating. But yeah, no. Other than that, it's been positive. So.
How long have you been managing now for the women's team?
So since we started it up again, so May 2018. So 2.5 years now, I guess.
So you've seen like a big improvement in those sort of.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we came in, it was kind of starting from scratch. So there was nothing there. There were some junior girls teams there, but no seniors and no teams close enough to sort of bring any seniors up. So we had to go out and recruit 2 full squads from scratch, and just with a blank canvas, really build everything from the ground up over that time period. And that's kind of the work that's been going on over the last two and a half years.
Yeah, you can tell by like social media interactions that people are getting involved. I mean, we came to it was last season, the OB and Wigston, I think it was.
Yeah, Middle Lane.
Yeah, the amount of people there, fantastic. I mean, we actually had tickets for Saturday's game last Saturday that got postponed.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a bit, but yeah, we were going to come down to that. Have you had a lot of fans like down at the games?
Yeah,
recently?
definitely. Do you know, and since we've sort of moved to Baseford as well, and obviously Baseford's a fantastic venue in itself, and they've been great as a club, as a host, and with it being really accessible, obviously it's close to the city centre, it's on the tram link, so yeah, we've noticed more people coming down, a few sort of Baseford fans taking an interest, and yeah, like I say, the more the merrier. Really, we're just trying to sort of get the word out there, and I think for the majority of people that come, they always go home having really enjoyed it. So. Yeah, just keep building on it really, year on year and week on week.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so I want to take it back a little bit to sort of the start of the pandemic. It was very uncertain times and it was quite confusing times really, but was there really a point when the women's team was sort of told like your season's going to end now or this is going to happen at this date?
Yeah, it was a really, really frustrating period, I think, because obviously from a performance point of view, we'd gone really, really well sort of back half of the inaugural season. We're unbeaten in the league and points per game, on course for promotion, and that was the objective. And then there was a temporary sort of stop and things all sort of ground to a halt a little bit, and then we couldn't train. It was just a case of just sitting there and waiting. Nobody was sure when or what was going to happen. And then when we saw the sort of WSL and Championship had been sort of knocked on the head, and then they were talking about, obviously voiding the season for clubs below, and that was a real killer for us. Obviously, we understood and the nature of the season as it was and the nature of the pandemic, it's understandable. But, I guess from a footballing perspective, it was a real shame for us. So yeah, we sort of found out after we'd been, I think, a couple of months off training, just trying to keep interactive with the team through Zoom and things like that, and fitness challenges, and we found out that the season had been null and void. So just all that progress sort of gone in an instant. It was tough.
Was that difficult to? Obviously,
yeah,
we were in complete lockdown, weren't we? So there was virtually no face-to-face interaction. Was that hard to keep up and keep in contact with the players?
Do you know what? I think I think a testament to the environment we've set. We've got a real close-knit group of players and staff, and it feels like a family, really. And I think everybody was really, really good to each other, really supportive of each other through that period at a time where, general members of the public are struggling anyway, and it psychologically it was tough for loads of different reasons aside from football. And football sometimes is that escape and that release that allows you to go and blow off that bit of steam. So I think in that respect it was tough for some of the girls and certainly us as a staff. But we knew at some point we'd be able to get back together on the grass again. So it was just a question of keeping in touch and staying positive. And like I say, as soon as we found out, it was sort of dusting yourself off. It was a bit frustrating at first, and then it was, what can we look forward to and how can we plan to sort of kick on next year? So
yeah, and you kind of like understood that was what was going to happen with the season, or was there always a hope that it was going to carry on? Or
there was a period where we weren't too sure. Obviously, across different aspects of the game, men's, women's, and different tiers, different things were being discussed, whether it was points per game or whether it was trying to resume the season. There was discussion around, why would they sort of focus on starting a new season with the old one not finished? So maybe we'd come back and finish the old season. But so there was a bit of uncertainty. But yeah, like I say, as soon as we heard, it was just a case of processing that and sort of moving forward, really.
If you look at, sorry, George, do you want to go?
Yeah, no, you go.
If you look at the start of last season, obviously football is football. The world is normal. You then get the go ahead that this season is going to start.
Yeah.
Obviously there are different things, but how different is it? Because we're all fans. We're getting an outside perspective, but actually at the club, how different is it?
I think, yeah, I mean, to be honest, like now it's not too dissimilar, but certainly to begin with, I mean, sort of pre-season was obviously massively delayed. The normal sort of process we go through it in terms of trials and trying to recruit players, we weren't able to do that. So, very much drawing on kind of knowledge of players in the game or players we knew were interested to make those connections and have those conversations. And, in one or two cases, kind of, make a couple of signings without being able to have them down at trials, but just a bit of knowledge and a bit of information from them. So that was the biggest challenge. And then when we did come back, it was the sort of rule of 6. So you could only have 5 players and 1 coach in a group. So it was a question of socially distanced and what could you make work and what could be useful for the players in that scenario. And then it got opened up again to you could go to sort of full squad and socially distance. And then the socially distanced aspect has now come off. So we can go to sort of full contact training. So yeah, it's been a process and it's been a sharp learning curve for everybody. But yeah, I think, as a group, we managed it okay. It's been a challenge, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to sort of ask how difficult it had been to sign players, and obviously you sort of ran over it there, but would you say it's been harder to sort of select a team together that you're really happy with, or is that something?
I think, again, sort of echoing back to what I said earlier, we didn't want to make wholesale changes this summer. We were in a great position. Performances were fantastic. Naturally, in our squad, a couple of players were university students, and our captain, for example, had moved back home down south. So Jess left us, and they're sort of big holes you've got to fill, and a couple of the players moving back home, or another player, Beth, has sort of moved abroad to play professionally, which is incredible for her as well. So it was a question of then how do we fill those gaps and can we make sure the quality's there? So like I say, a little bit of that was down to sort of knowledge of players in the area or players that we'd sort of potentially had contact with before, or just doing your research, really. Again, sort of speaking to the coaches, managers that we know in the game that have worked with these players, and getting the background, making sure the attitude was right and making sure the mentality was right, and then bringing those into the team. And like I say, we've not made wholesale changes. It's just been a few new faces, and they've all been brilliant. They've slotted in really, really well, and the environment's really, really positive again this year. So no, we've sort of navigated it quite well, but it was definitely challenging.
We had tickets, didn't we, George, to Thrapston last week. We've already brushed upon it. I think we purchased 15 minutes before the tweet came out that the game was off, which was gutting. How did that did that shock you when it came about that they just weren't going to travel?
Do you know what? It's a difficult one. I think, obviously, with this, again, you have to be mindful and understand individual opinion on it. And I think there was anxiety from Thrapston in terms of Nottingham in the press and a lot of stuff in the media around us moving potentially into tier 3. And They've got people in the team that obviously they've got families, and they've got to that comes first over football always. So it was and it wasn't a surprise. But then I think on the other side of the coin, we've all gone into this season understanding the picture, and understanding what we're dealing with, and we sort of then at the same time try and put your trust in the FA, the county FA, and the government to get it right in terms of regulations, and then we abide by that. So yeah, it was frustrating for us, definitely. You can understand it to a point, but again, just the communication. If we'd have known earlier on in the week that was potentially going to happen, then other things could have been done about it. So it is what it is.
Yeah, so going on to like your upcoming games, do you have any doubt, because obviously there's new restrictions coming in either today or tomorrow, I think. Do you have any doubt that any fixtures are going to struggle in the future?
It's always a possibility. I think the league after last week, I think there was I think Kettering was another team in the division above who'd sort of gone through the same process we'd sort of had at Thrapston. So I think the league are acting on that now, and we're kind of expecting the league to take the stance that if players aren't comfortable to travel, that's okay, but they need to deregister, and the season's going to go ahead. So I think it'll come to a head, and either teams will be in or they're out. And if they're out, that's fine. That's their personal choice and circumstance, and we support that. But as a club, we feel comfortable that we've as a committee and as a staff, we've put everything in place that we need to make it as safe as possible for our players to continue, and we'll definitely be doing that. So
yeah, cool.
Like, we know you started well. We can see it with the results. We can see it on social media. There's just a buzz around the club, as you've already said. Obviously it's going to be high hopes, but what are the hopes for this season? What do you want out of the remainder of it?
Ultimately, I think we want to get promoted. We don't make any sort of secret about that. That's our intention to do that. We believed we were going to do it last season, and we believe we're good enough to do that. We're also aware that there are other teams that will say the exact same thing in this division, and they'll all have a say in the outcome of that over the coming months. And football's football. Anything can happen, and you can do everything you can, and sometimes it doesn't work out the way you want to. But certainly, I think to be realistic in terms of expectations as a club and as a staff, we want to get promoted, and we've got the players to do that. And a lot of it will come down to sort of who's managed this situation the best as well, because COVID will definitely play its part. Inevitably, we're sure we'll end up missing players some weeks through self-isolation or positive tests, and there's no way to get around that, and you just hope that they fall on good weekends for you, and that you don't miss key players at key times, and we'll see how we come out the other side of it, I guess.
Yeah, it's like everyone's learning how to deal with it, aren't they? Even the leagues don't know what's coming next. So.
Yeah, and it's one thing to the next day upon day. We kind of were told the restrictions this week around city centre going into tier 3, and like Newark and Sure being tier 2, and what that would mean for our players, and what would that mean for spectators. And then that's within 24 hours been completely sort of flipped on its head. So, it's an ever evolving piece, isn't it? And we just got to ride the wave, so to speak, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing I did want to ask you, Adam, obviously you're a Notts County fan yourself. What do you find it like managing the Notts County women's team?
Yeah, it's funny, really. I think sometimes I kind of, I'll kind of be walking through the house and putting the kit on, and you just get that little moment where you think, this is incredible. I've supported the club since I was 3 years old. I've followed them all over the place and been through the very few highs and lots of lows during that time. And yeah, no, it's just, I'm really, really proud, to be perfectly honest. And I think I'm just so passionate about the club, and want to kind of bring it success. So, and the women's games, I'm massively passionate about that anyway, and it's my day job as well. So yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great honour.
There seems to be a big push, isn't there, on women's football at the minute, and there is definitely growth there. It is. When we came down to watch it, I've already said it was fantastic. And then it was the end of last season's cup final, wasn't it? Was at Wembley. Was it the same day as the men's, or the day before? But
yeah, I think it was potentially the same weekend, wasn't it? And obviously the old Notts County ladies team, and against Chelsea, that was the first ever women's FA Cup final to be played at Wembley. And sort of, I think going back to the Olympics in 2012 and the GB team, and then the World Cups and the Euros, and the sort of more and more women's players becoming household names, and the game's growing, and support for it's growing. And as well, we're just seeing down. I went down to a grassroots club the other evening down in Burton Joyce, and they're sort of under 10s, under 11s players, and they've got 20 odd girls running around with smiles on the face enjoying it. And our captain Holly came down with me, and she was saying, when she played for Burton Joyce as a kid, she was the one girl on the boys team, and they let her train but they wouldn't let her play. And that's where we've come to, from that to now. All these clubs have multiple girls teams at multiple ages, and the game's just growing every year. It's getting massive. So brilliant.
That is fantastic. So obviously we're doing a podcast about football, and it's pretty much impossible not to talk about COVID at the minute. I want to take it away from COVID a bit now, because people just do want that bit of a break, and we want to move on to the men's team. Let's purely take COVID out of it. The start of the season, really positive, I think, around Notts. Would you agree, George?
Yeah. Well, there's high hopes in there all the time. Especially, obviously, we've dropped down a league, 2 seasons ago now. We've got high expectations with a big club. But yeah, just the start of the season in itself. What did you make of it? Obviously, up to now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been really, really positive. I think, in terms of just the feeling around that kind of cliche that's been kind of spoken about a bit over the last few months, I know, but just the kind of feeling coming out of the club, and the sort of positivity and sort of feel that everybody's pulling in the same direction in terms of the owners and, the staff at the club and the management team and the players. It very much feels like a cohesive effort. And, I think a bit of sort of realistic expectation with Notts fans as well now, of kind of understanding that we're a big team, but there are other teams in the mix this season as well, and it's not that easy. It's difficult to get out of this league, but it's been a really, really positive start. The performances, I think, for the most have been good, and I've been really, really happy as a Notts fan, to be fair. I think it's been positive.
You can see if it clicks and when it clicks. The opening sort of exchanges in the Barnet game and the Oldham game, if it clicks, no one can deal with us. Yeah. It's just, can we continue it for the full game?
I think, that's the nature of it, isn't it? It's the kind of levels as well. Like, again, to be realistic, if you're watching a Premier League team, they're going to be, potentially consistent over 90 minutes, and we might not be, and that's okay. And it's just, managing games and managing performances, but. I think they've got a real sort of nucleus of a good squad, and some of the new players, I think, as they grow into the club, are going to be really, really good acquisitions. Rodriguez looks really, really exciting in spells at the minute, and I think, as he sort of adjusts and gets used to the English game, he could be a real star this season. So it's been good.
That is one question I was going to go on to sort of ask. Is there any in particular player that we signed over the summer that you're really looking forward to seeing play?
Yeah, I think Rodriguez, like I say, brings that bit of excitement, and there's always that sort of excitement when a foreign signing comes in at this level, and and he's sort of technical and he's skillful, and he's that kind of player that's going to get people on the edge of the seats. I think so. That I'm excited to see how he grows over the course of the season. I think Reeves has been a really, really positive impact since he's come in as well, in terms of. Just that engine in midfield and his range of passing to bring players into the game has been superb to see. So, I think there's been a couple of good acquisitions, and definitely looking forward to seeing more of them as the season progresses. But even sort of keeping Wooten last season, like what a massive thing that was for the club to keep him and tie him down. He inevitably is going to prove his worth again this season. He's been fantastic, hasn't he, so far? And just a really positive guy around the club. So it's great.
I think a lot of the fans we get on the fan chats have got him top scorer in the league, so I wouldn't put it past him the way he started.
No, I wouldn't either. Yeah, and I think in the past people perhaps thought he traditionally wasn't your sort of massive goal scorer, in terms there's a lot more to his game, and he adds a lot more to the team than just his goals, and the fact that he's scoring as well consistently is brilliant. So that's good. I
want to go back to a couple of minutes ago. I mentioned that Notts haven't quite got the consistency just yet. For the full 90 minutes. So certainly 35, 40 minutes. Going back to you as a manager, you must see points in the games for the women's team where you're absolutely bossing it, and then something will just go like that, and you can see the tide turning. How do you sort of deal with that?
I think it's, it is difficult. Obviously, momentum shifts can be massive in games. We had a game against Lincoln in the FA Cup this season, and we're 3-0 up at just before half time, and they got a penalty and got a goal back. So their tails were up. They came out second half and got another goal back, and then all of a sudden that momentum shifts, and it is difficult to deal with. I think, it comes down to sort of character of players and being able to recognise the situation of the game and understand where they're at in the game, and not get sort of carried away with the emotion, and not to live in the moment too much, and to be a bit more mindful of that, I guess. Obviously, there's changes you can recognise in terms of whether that's formation. If you notice the opposition are getting overloads or combating your style of play well, you can always sort of change it up with a substitute or change your formation. So yeah.
You look for your bigger players then on the pitch.
Yeah,
to
I
sort of
think
step
it's
up.
crucial. Like, leaders in every team are so important, and players that understand the game really, really well. Players that can talk to other players, and often, certainly in our team, we've got a couple of creative players that are they're absolute magic, and they can produce something out of nothing in a game. And then you've got other players in the team who, they're just consistently solid all the time. They're really, really positive performers, but they're really, really good at speaking to the players around them and reminding them of what's expected in the moment, and when it's right to go and be exciting and creative, and when we need to be a little bit more disciplined. So
literally what you're describing, I can see one of those in the men's team. I can see your Doyles, your Reeves, your exciting players, your Enzios, Roberts. Like, that's what's giving the positive vibe around the club at the minute. Literally everything you describe you want.
Yeah,
we seem to have.
Yeah, and I think it's the balance, isn't it? And that's the kind of golden ticket, really, isn't it? Is getting that balance right, and being able to blend the team with creative, exciting players that can win you matches, but also having those players that can sort of roll the sleeves up and get in the thick of it and drag you out of a tough spot when it's perhaps the tide's turn and it's not going your way, or if you've got to dig in and do the dirty stuff. You've got players in that squad, certainly in the men's team as well, that can do that. Doyle's a leader, isn't he? We've seen that so many times where he sort of carries the team, and he doesn't accept anything less than 100% from the players around him, and the players thrive off that, and that's crucial to having a squad.
Yeah, I think when we talk about what we just talked about there, you look at that Sutton game where it was looking like a 0-0, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we scored with seconds to go. Like, games like that where it's not been a pretty game and you can still pull a result, I think shows huge character. But that being said, with the sort of different ways you can win a game, with good football, just slog it up, like whichever way you can win a game, I do think Notts have that sort of in them. So that being said, where do you see Notts sort of finishing at the end of the season?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think you kind of, as that sort of boy Notts fan inside me, like, we're going to win the league. It's going to be incredible. We're going to go to Wembley for some other tournament and win that as well, and everything's going to be fantastic. But like I say, it's a tough old league, and like we've just talked about, they've got to win games in different ways. Teams aren't going to let us go and play them off the park. Teams are going to, they're going to see the creative players, and at this level, they're going to get kicked. They're going to get booted around the place. They're going to go to terrible pitches, and it's going to be difficult. And they've got to understand, how to win games in many, many scenarios, which they've shown they can do so far. So, I'd like to think we're going to be in and around the mix. I think it's realistic to expect that Notts will be definitely challenging at the right end of the table. Whether that's one of the automatic spot, or whether it's through the playoffs, I certainly think we'll be in that picture come the end of the season.
I don't think I could take another playoff run. I don't.
No, I've predicted a win. I've predicted us to beat Wrexham in the playoff final. So.
Okay, yeah, that could be an interesting one. Yeah, I'm the same. I don't know if I can emotionally cope with it after this year's been a rollercoaster already.
It's a nightmare.
Let's just win the league and go up. It'll be fine. Don't need extra drama, do we?
Final point. We've had a big break now, the men's team, because of obviously the positive tests.
Yeah.
It's going to be a couple of weeks. I know I've just announced that Aldershot is our next game on the 7th. That comes then before a Stockport game on the 11th. How would you deal with a break of that long? Because the season was in complete full flow. It was 2 games a week, Saturday, Tuesday, and then all of a sudden it's gone. How would you have dealt with that with your team?
I think it's really, really difficult, but again, it's about relying on those relationships and the trust there. I'm sure Neil and the staff will have, put sort of fitness programs together for the boys, and it's that trust that they're going to buy into that, and they're going to work and keep ticking over. Again, with us, when we break, it's just about keeping in touch and staying positive and keeping the conversations going, making sure you don't lose that sort of team mentality and that togetherness. Inevitably, it's going to be difficult. You kind of, it's almost like a pre-season again, isn't it? You're kind of coming back after a break and having to kind of get a bit of that rust off. But they're all professional, and I'm sure the environment that's been built up for the club, they'll all be doing everything they can to make sure they're coming back sharp when they're ready to play again.
Yeah, let's hope so. Adam, it's been fantastic to have you on. Really insightful. I'm sure everyone will find it extremely interesting. But thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah,
all the best. All the best, Adam.
Yeah, take care, guys. Thanks
Adam.
much.
Cheers.